So Doc, thanks so much for taking some time today. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Really interested in your field of work. Mental health is something I'm passionate about. Tell me about how you got into what you're doing now.
Let's see. There's so many avenues I can go, but injuries. So throughout my career, as far as collegiate on, I've had 7 surgeries. So the only healthy year I had was my freshman year. After that, that summer, ACL, like it was every year I had a surgery or 2. And bouncing back from those was all mental, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors like, oh, you're good to go, you know, PT, all right, you're ready. But if this isn't ready, you know, so I learned how this can heal itself quick, but this actually doesn't heal itself as quick as I thought, because I was so timid coming back on the court about re-injury and stuff like that. But what really shed light on me focusing on like going into mental health was really I appealed my last half of the season, 2012. That's why I was like, oh, I've been there forever, but 2012. Yeah. And the NCAA forced me to see a therapist.
Oh, interesting.
It was like, he had too many surgeries, he has to see a therapist. Saw a therapist was like, oh, I'm so unsure, like this is more sports psych stuff. So they referred me to a sports psychologist. And the sports psychologist came up, you know, talked to me, and he was just like, your ability to bounce back from all these injuries and where you come from and all these things, he was like, if you can replicate yourself in other people, you'll have a long career. I didn't understand it at the time.
That's deep.
You know, the more I looked into it, I was like, oh, I would love to do therapy because my degree was psychology. I would love to do therapy with athletes because I've done and suffered through so much stuff that I can hope to shed light on a lot of matters and help individuals kind of bounce back from like injuries or failed expectations, all those type of things, you know, that I kind of dealt with. So that's kind of what got me into the mental health side, yeah.
That's awesome. It sounds like a crazy journey, right?
Oh, yeah, insane.
Yeah, so, and you're not only working with basketball, you work with all sports at UVU.
Yeah, all sports, golf, soccer, volleyball, baseball, you know, softball, all that stuff, as well as the non-traditional sports, you know, so the rodeo, esports, lacrosse, cheer, dance, even the mascot. You know, I kind of help out everywhere anyone needs me type of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm curious, like, do you see, I'm sure you see trends of, you know, people that are mentally strong, people that need some work in that area. What type of trends do you see in young athletes?
I would say those risk takers, the mental strong ones, I say that come from my programs, whichever team, like the best of the best who are usually holding awards or getting all WAC or all American, all those things, they're risk takers, you know. They're used to being uncomfortable. So they're mentally stronger than most because they failed more than most to bounce back and learn how to recover and all those things. So when they're out there performing, they actually give a little bit more and they can actually endure a lot more stress than your average person who's scared of like making mistakes, I don't want to turn the ball over and all these things. So I would say, they're just positive risk takers for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I can relate to that. You have to go through you have to play through the mistakes, right? You've got to get that experience to where you're playing loose and playing free, right?
Oh yeah. It's hard to learn, right? Especially if that's not your personality, right? Someone who's like a go-getter or, you know, taking chances. So the ability to learn that in however many sessions prior, you know, as a freshman or even a senior, right? Getting them to at least have the willingness to try some things usually can wake up, you know, like an awareness about myself or their self, I should say, where they can like take more risks, they can communicate more, they're just more outgoing, even outside of sports. But yeah, I see a lot of different trends. And the ones who aren't, say, mentally as strong, it's just a different perspective, right? Their perspective is, I don't want to fail. right? No one wants to fail, but only those who have failed and bounced back understand the purpose of failure and how to learn from that, and then you can correct it and bounce back and become whatever it is that you're seeking to do.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, you have to embrace failure. Failure is a part of winning, right?
True,
and
true.
You gotta go through that. One thing that I noticed, so like you, I got introduced to a sports psychologist early on in my college career, and
Nice.
I loved it. Like I felt like it took me to another level. And then I got back from my mission in 2012, and again, like I met with Craig Manning, who was the head sports psychologist here, and felt like I started learning tools and learning more about myself that helped me become more emotionally aware, and it, I don't know, it felt like it took my game to another level, and then I got to the pros, and I noticed pretty quickly that the players, that all the talent was very similar, right?
Yeah.
But the guys that separated themselves were, the ones that had figured the mental side out. What types of tools and principles and things do you teach? Because I think, for me, there was a time when I thought, some guys just have it, but I learned that these things can be trained, these things can be learned. There's tools out there available. Like, tell me some of the things that you do in your work.
I got a lot of random things I throw at the kids. One big one that I do with every team or individuals that come in is critique over criticism, right? When something happens, say a failed expectation, a turnover, or whatever it is, mistake, I teach them to critique it rather than criticize it. Most people go straight to critical, right? Turn the ball over and say, oh crap, coach is gonna take me out. People just watch that, I'm embarrassed. And they go critical.
That's normal, I think everyone deals that,
But when we do that, it comes also with a emotion, right? So now if I'm like going critical, oh crap, I'm embarrassed, coach, team, everyone's looking at me, now I feel the shame, I feel the guilt and all those things, which means I don't want that to happen again, which means I'm not going to give my best so it doesn't happen again. But when we critique it, you can actually learn from that mistake, So if I come down and I lose the ball and it goes out of bounds, it's like, you know what? I'm standing straight up. I need to get down low and dribble the ball. So you're able to critique it, learn from it, so it doesn't happen again. But when we go critical, you actually start to get into this funk, right? And most of the kids that come into my office are like, I haven't had a good game, I haven't had a hit in a long time, I'm like in a funk. And I'm like, well, you're not in a funk, you're in a critical state, You only see the critical side of your mistakes or your game, right? Rather than critiquing, why is this happening to me? You only look at the other side of, well, why did that happen to me? I shouldn't have happened to me. It's a perfectionist mindset. So getting them out of the perfectionist mindset into more of a active learning process usually gets them more willing to make a mistake because they know they can learn from the mistake. So that's kind of my thing, critique over criticism.
I love that. Love that. It's self-talk, right?
Oh, for sure. Self-talk is everything, right?
How are some ways, if a kid comes in and you can tell right off he has terrible self-talk and the story that he's telling himself is bad, how do you approach a situation like that?
One, teach them how to change the language, There's power in words, which, as you get older, we all start to learn there's power in words. So always tell them, like, all right, you just said you suck. How many times did you hear that, Because you have to think about it first. You said it, and once you say it, you just heard it again. So it's 3 times effective hitting you versus just, you know what? I don't suck. I just made a mistake because of So teaching them how to change the language when things happen also holds that emotional state, So self-talk is very powerful. You can make yourself feel like crap, or you can make yourself feel awesome, But in that moment, that's the decision you have to make. But also, that's the level of awareness you have to have. So building an individual's awareness usually gets them to that point where they can choose the right language in that moment rather than, like I said, going critical.
Yeah, for sure. I think, for me, a lot of times I would think I just have to be positive. I think that's a term that gets overused. Hey, just be positive, be positive.
True.
And life's not always positive, and there's
True.
tough things, right, that you have to go through. How much of it is just being real with yourself and, you know, trying to take emotion out of it? I mean, is that something you talk about, taking emotion out of it, or is it embracing emotion?
It's a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
I teach them, are we making emotional decisions, right? Because the outcome of emotional decisions is usually if I feel a certain way, I'm gonna act a certain way, you know? So you take the emotion out of it and actually just look at it, you know, just use the brain. I always say, is it heart or is it a brain decision? So when they start to use the brain decision, which means looking at it logically from all perspectives rather than just their own, feeling like a failure, they're usually compromising with themselves. Like, you know, so I'm not a failure or I'm not whatever it is. It's I'm making these little mistakes, but these mistakes can be, you know, gained as far as like knowledge or experience, and I can get better from these things. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, but building perspective is everything. And once you build a perspective, that's along with like self-concept. So a person's self-concept is everything. Are they even aware of themselves?
Yeah.
Are they aware of their emotional state? Do they know where it comes from? One of the principles, going back to that I teach is like anger. So I always tell people like, hey, what do you think anger is? You know, I always ask them a question. What is anger? Oh, someone's mad, someone's punching, someone. I'm like, all right, that's what we see. So we put a label, we call that anger, but what is it? It's hard to answer. You know, everyone's like, well, I don't know. It's either pain, hurt, shame, guilt, or uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
One or a combination of those is gonna make a person angry, you know? So if I make you very uncomfortable, yeah, you're gonna get angry, you know? If I hit you, it hurts, you're gonna get angry at me, you know? Someone important in your life leaves. That's a different pain. It spawns eventually, years, and turns into anger. And you don't even notice it because it will come out in particular ways. So that's why I say building an individual's self-concept, their awareness, usually they can get to the point of understanding how to react, you know?
Being able to identify too,
Yes.
the emotion,
Yes.
what's happening.
Yeah. And I try to, react versus response, right?
Yeah.
So I teach them to respond rather than react. React is emotional.
Yeah.
Responding to something, usually there's thought associated with it. So yeah, that's kind of my thing when it comes to like anger or thoughts. Naturally, we all react, you know, we all react.
Yeah.
Emotionally, we will react quick, but if you can sit and think for a quick second, you know, you're able to respond. So whether it's a turnover, whether it's a strikeout, whatever it is, thinking in that process, like in that moment, you can respond adequately to hold your emotional state. So now you can stay playing at a top tier level.
Yeah. Instead of spiraling downward,
Instead of spiraling down, yes. Which all athletes do at some point in their life. Yeah.
I'm curious too, like, I think you have to prepare to respond in the right way.
True.
You know, like, are there things you teach athletes to do being proactive? Like, you know, maybe they're playing really well. Like, are there things that they can be proactive to be ready to respond the right way?
I'm big on mantras, you know, so it's like my mantra is Nike, because Nike is what?
Just do it.
Just do it, right? So if I'm nervous before anything, I don't care if I'm at a conference, I got to present in front of thousands or teams, or, you know, I got a particular client, Olympian or something like that, you know, I get nervous. Everyone gets nervous, but at the end of the day, nervousness comes with a lot of self-doubt. You know, now I'm like, oh crap, should I be doing this? Am I the one to even be talking? I mean, even this interview, who am I to be sitting here talking like this, you know? But then at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, Nike, just do it. Because once you hop in there, figure it out, you know? So getting people to get into that mindset off a mantra. So I usually create their mantra off something that's meaningful for them. You know, it could be a mascot, it could be a name or whatever it is.
That's
so they know to
powerful,
utilize that in a moment of doubt.
They can come back to that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it brings them, it's like a grounding technique almost. So that's something, certain things, so like if they mess up, instead of like getting ready to get frustrated and cuss themselves out or something like that, they have them pinch themselves, which is like, especially my golfers, I do.
Brings them back to reality.
Brings them back to
the
reality.
present, right?
Yes, so instead of like right before they pinch themselves, it's like, relax. You know, so there's little things I'll give them, but it depends on the person, you know, and the personality. Because not everyone's willing to do kind of anything. So yeah, those are kind of some things I do to prepare them.
Yeah.
There's bags of tools out there that anyone can use, but they have to be tailored to the individual.
Yeah, I love that. Everybody's different. Everyone's going through something different, right? I feel like with a lot of athletes that I've talked to, they're either living too far in the future or in the past, right? And the best athletes, best people in life, they are able to live like right here and now and in the present. And it's hard to do, right? Because everybody has demons, everyone has mistakes and things that they hold on to. Is it meditation? Is it journaling? Like what types of things do you recommend people to do?
I do a lot of that, like guided meditations. The journaling is very specific to whatever it is they're trying to accomplish, you know? So, you know, most therapists, go journal about your day or journal about your experience, all these things. I like to pinpoint like what happened, when did it happen, what triggered it, the emotional state you have. That way we can eventually see a pattern, you know?
Yeah.
I just did this with someone today, actually, and I looked at their journal. I was like, why every Tuesday and Thursday you're just frustrated? At 1 o'clock, what's before 1 o'clock? And she's like, I got labs. I'm like, okay. You know, so we can kind of pinpoint. Now, once I pinpoint, we can prepare. Before labs, let's do these things to kind of ground you, keep you calm. That way you can go in there with less frustration or less doubt, you know, and actually successfully do something under a calm state rather than just like going crazy in there. So journaling's good, meditation's great. You know, the self-talk stuff is awesome, but ultimately it's just understanding an individual's perspective towards an experience.
Yeah.
I think once you, like for me, I mirror that to them, and when they'll say something, it's like, that kind of doesn't align with any of their core values, you know, or things like that. So I kind of reflect it back to them and have them actually processing like, that doesn't make sense. You know, getting them to that aha moment or self, you know, realization, that's ultimately like the goal, you know, because once a person has that, now they understand they're in full control of how they feel. I can feel like crap right now, or, you know what, I can stay calm and feel like, you know what, a mistake is a mistake. I'm still the man, you know? So that's what I try to do with the athletes, try to keep them in a state where nothing can kind of put them down, you know? But going back to how you say there's mentally tough ones and there's the other ones, it's interesting because most of our top athletes are the ones that actually come in, you know? And I present this in front of every team in the beginning of the season because I do like all the drug and alcohol stuff, so I present.
You're saying they come in to get help, so come in to meet with you.
Yeah, so I tell them like, and it's just a basic training every team has to get, but during that I tell them like, why the people only on the podium or the All-Americans they're the only ones that come in. So they seek help, you see what I mean? They want to be better, and that's why they are usually the best, is because they don't care. You know, I'll see the therapist. And most people's like, I don't need to see the therapist. I just got to figure my game out, you know, and then I can get better and all these things. So I try to normalize a lot of that with them throughout the years. Just, hey, come in, just come talk to me. Just holler at me, you know. Or if I travel with a team, sitting on a plane, I might just talk to them for a little bit. But usually once I speak to them in a, you know, a casual way, stuff comes out. You know, it's like, can I come see you because I'm dealing with. So I try to normalize a lot of those things. You know, there's big stigmas with mental health. And I think the stigma stuff is kind of going away. I think the awareness, I think it works. You know, mental health awareness is actually out there. I think the other component missing is the acceptance part. I don't think a lot of people accept that there are a lot of mental health, you know, issues and concerns, whether it's sports, business, anything, you know. The acceptance part, I think we got to come to that point because the awareness is there, but everyone doesn't accept it.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, being vulnerable enough to open up and realize that there's a problem and that they can get better at it, right? What else are some of the stigmas and like biggest challenges with mental health? I know we live in, you know, the age of distraction, right? Social media and like, I think there's, you know, lack of discipline sometimes that people talk about and are aware of. But yeah, what are some of the challenges you see?
The challenges I see, like you said, being vulnerable. a lot of people, growing, even myself, is taught not to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Got to man up,
Yeah.
And be tough about it and all those things. But what we're taught to do is kind of bury our emotions, kind of tuck them away.
Yeah.
And that's why I always talk about the anger. Hey, if you have these things in you, you will be angry, which means if you have years of burying things in you, you don't know how to respond to stresses. You can't respond well to triggers or failures or a sense of failure, I should say. So, the stigma of mental health is, are you gonna be vulnerable or not? And not even with like a therapist or something, but with yourself. A lot of people aren't honest or vulnerable with themselves,
It's true.
So it's like, oh, I'm supposed to go, D1, I'm supposed to go to the league, I'm supposed to, boom, boom, but it's like, okay, you play 2 minutes a game, you boom, boom, boom. When are we gonna be real with ourselves, And then also, when are we gonna be vulnerable enough to ask for help? And even with our great players, I tell them, hey, just because something works doesn't mean it can't be improved. Yeah, you averaged 20 last year, doesn't mean we can't get you to 25 this year, Let's just not settle. So constantly telling individuals, even the good ones, like, hey, keep coming in, keep getting better, So that's kind of going over the stigmas, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. A couple more questions. What's like the most satisfying thing for you in meeting with these athletes?
I love seeing someone with so much potential blossom. Like seeing that caterpillar turn into a butterfly, love it, And it's happened, I've been at UVU almost 4 years now. This is December. So actually a few more days, December 5th or 8th will be 4 years for me. So I've watched some freshmen, struggle, going through personal things in their lives, end up becoming, all WAC, all Americans, and all that things. It's like, you actually did it, So just seeing someone being willing to take that risk and actually work on the things that they learned with me or apply them actually on the field or the diamond or the court, like watching that happen is like so rewarding to me, and then seeing them actually now gain the confidence. I love that stuff. Love it. Yeah.
It's so awesome. Well, Doc, thanks so much for your time. Congrats on all you're doing a lot of good in the world.
Thank you.
I think mental health is something that affects everyone, right?
Yeah.
So great job. Keep up the good work and all you're doing, man.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
So Doc, coming from where you're from, Inglewood, Chicago, would you ever picture yourself being at UVU, meeting with all these athletes and doing the good that you're doing? And
to be honest, no. I never thought, I was like everyone else where I come from, it's just go to the league, go to the league. But once that first ACL hit, everything changes, Never thought I would be here, but I think through my experiences, like coming from Chicago to, Utah, where it's culturally, everything is just different, So being able to adjust to that, I was 17 when I got here, so I was very young.
Yeah.
It was a lot of different things I had to handle, but everything in which I went through, suffered through, or whatever it is, I think prepare me for this, if that makes sense. So once I decided, you know what, let me retire from basketball and let me go to grad school, my main focus really was, you know what, I'm gonna come back to UVU. And I wanted to become what I wish I would have had when I was here. So that's why what I do is just so meaningful, it's very personal. No one really does what I do who is even a sports psych because it's like a concierge service, I'm on call, I show up at workouts, I'm at practice, I travel with each team. I try to make it as personal as possible with all the kids, and I don't care where we meet, If it's a one-on-one with a golfer, come on, let's go golf, Yeah, I just wanted to be what I wish I would have had. And it's just more even, than the mental health stuff. It's someone who can give some career perspective, because I had to overcome a lot of things. So I think my ability to share my personal experiences and disclose that in certain sessions actually gives motivation and help to a lot of the athletes, because it's like, oh crap, I didn't know you went through all that. I didn't know you came from,
you've been there, you've been through it all.
Exactly. So when I tell them, hey, you can work on these things and you can excel, I think they kind of like take it serious because it comes from someone like me. And they know I've kind of been through the rut, So there's a level of respect that I think that I'm gained through my experiences that I went through, for sure.
And you can relate to them.
Yes,
based
the
on what you've
relation
been
is
through.
definitely that, you know. So seeing someone not too far out of college, but, you know, young, not really old and all that thing, it's just more relatable. But also I can speak their language, you know, whatever
Right.
it is, very well. So I don't come off as a therapist, you know. This is the dressiest you will ever see me. I know
Yeah,
it
you look
shocked
good,
a lot
man.
of people in here when I can't, because I usually I don't dress up at all. I'm very casual, you know, because I want to be approachable, you know. And if I come in like this every day, it could be threatening, it could be a lot of different things. So I come down and I meet everyone where they're at, pretty much.
Yeah, it's awesome. Talk to me a little bit about this year's UVU basketball team, and the guys that you work with. I know on the BYU side, you know, they have a team of sports psychologists that are working with the team, guys on and off the court, you know, dealing with stuff. Talk about the relationships you've built with the coaches and the players, I guess.
Me and Mark Masson are very close. When I used to play basketball at UVU, he would come every summer and hoop. So, and
Nice. That dog.
I love the man. He was just so big. I never seen someone that big when I first seen him. And I was like, I'm dunking on him. You know, I was like, back when I'm like, I'm dunking on him. I'm gonna try to dunk on him every time. And he was just too big, you know.
Yeah.
So when he got hired, it was like, oh man, you're here, you know. We kind of we love each other, you know. So we're very close, and I work with the guys because I know his perspective and what he's trying to accomplish and what he wants to do. So I use his philosophy when I work with the guys, if that makes sense. I actually do that with every coach. And that's why I travel a lot with the teams, because the more I can understand the coach's philosophy, I see what he says and how he moves. I take the same concepts when I'm working with them, building skills and all these things, because I don't want anything I do to go against what the coach does. So with basketball, you know, I know Mark very well, and he loves the fact that I'm very close to the team. And the players that I do work with, you know, they're great. A lot of them come in consistently, even if it's just talking, you know, because sometimes you just got to talk to someone.
Yeah, you just
a
gotta
lot of
talk it
kids
out.
aren't from, you know, places like here. They come from inner cities. They come from, you know, international. You know, we got, you know, Aziz, who's from Senegal, big 7-foot guy, but, you know, being able to just relate and talk and have a conversation with them, but then also bring in some of Coach's philosophy with the basketball team. So I'm very proud of what Mark Masson has done with this team, especially this year, and with the talent he's had, you know, being able to create and put out, you know, a product out there. It's been very unique. So I'm excited I'm not gonna lie, I'm excited for this BYU game. I know y'all have a chip on your shoulder from last year, and you should.
Of course.
You know, we're expecting a good game for sure.
Yeah, it will be. No doubt.
Oh, yeah.
So, Doc, how have your experiences in the mental health field, the people you work with, affected you in your work at home as a father to your daughters?
It gives me a lot of perspective. It gives me a lot, which it makes me focus more on like my daughters, like how I talk to them, you know, how I approach matters, how I encourage them to fail, you know, and I know they're getting ready. Oh, yeah, she's gonna fall off the couch, but let me not stop her.
Yeah.
She needs to. So seeing like the kids in college at UVU now, it makes me more intentional and deliberate with my girls at home for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's a lot of chaos at home, but being able to channel the energy in the right way, I'm sure you have a lot of experience and can relate to that.
Yeah. So, you know, I love them. And, you know, the teams know my girls. I bring them everywhere. If I do a workshop presentation, most of the time I try to have one of my daughters there. Because I'm also want them to see, hey, it's okay to be in front of a lot of people. So I'm like kind of showing
leading by
them.
example,
Yes, lead by example. That way they don't grow up kind of, you know, shy or social anxiety or anything like that. It's like, hey, it's okay to be you and talk however you want to talk. It doesn't matter who's in the room, you know? So, I'm more intentional and deliberate, especially with the girls, you know? I never thought I was gonna have girls, but once you have a girl, it changes you, you know? You guys, any man, you have a daughter, it changes you. I mean...
How many daughters do you have?
So I have two. I have a 5-year-old Zion and I have a 1-year-old Jordan.
Awesome.
Yeah, so those are my girls. We had an oldest son. My firstborn was my boy who I had in grad school. But he had passed at like 4.5 months with a rare disease that we just couldn't, you know, find out. But you learn a lot through loss, right? And that was like the day before I took my licensure exam. It was like the worst time possible.
Yeah.
But that was just another situation that if I didn't survive all the injuries and coming back, I don't know if I could have survived that, if that makes sense. So it's great how every scenario, everything that has happened in my life to this point, it does make me better in my role at UVU for sure.
Yeah. Doesn't make it any easier, but you know how to handle it some way.
Yeah. And a lot of kids know my story, so when they deal with death and stuff and then they come to me and talk, it's like, oh, well, he's lost, all these things. So they feel more comfortable talking about those things, and I appreciate it as well, because holding on to some of that stuff,
it's painful.
Oh, it's very painful. Yeah. But then that turns into anger quick, So me being able to get through that was great,
Is there a spiritual component to all of this?
Oh, for sure. Mind, body, and soul.
Yeah.
And one thing I teach the athletes is your being. I always talk about being. I'm big into Eastern, all that stuff. That's why I love meditation. I love mindfulness and all those things. And I use mindfulness in a way to build the spirit of the athlete, which is like, hey, have pride, have a certain sense of self, So building that self, which I like to refer as like the spirit of the individual, being able to move and be you and be comfortable in the skin and the body you are, there's for sure a spiritual component to this. And it's reflected in the stories that I'm getting out of the individuals, and I'm able to use their stories and build their character, And it doesn't matter how they identify as far as religious or spirituality, right? Because in my program, we had to learn about probably like 50 religions. So I love whoever comes out, I don't care what they are. They can come in and then I can use what they grew up with to help guide them through our therapeutic process for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is there an element of faith too? I mean, I feel like in my mental health journey, so much of it has been about leaning into the unknown. And there's an element of just, you got to have faith, put in the work and believe that, things are going to work out. And
you got to have faith in yourself, and that's, in the beginning, I talked about that positive risk taking, right? That's that's just faith, technically, Do you have enough faith in yourself to go and fail?
Yeah.
Do you have enough faith in yourself to actually succeed? It's funny how a lot of people are scared of success. I got a lot of good athletes who are scared of succeeding because what happens if I succeed? Now that's the expectation now. And now if that's expected of me, the pressure's on. But also, do you have faith? Like, just like me saying, Nike, let me just go out there and do it.
Yeah.
I have faith in myself that I don't care what the situation is, I'm gonna just jump in, make it work, and learn as I go. So I teach that concept when it comes to faith, Yeah.
It's powerful. It's great.